They say you never really know a person until you're about to marry them. I'd always dismissed it as the kind of cynical adage people repeat to temper a young couple's joy, like telling children about the boogeyman to make them behave. But standing there, my keys dangling from my fingers, the familiar weight of them suddenly feeling alien in my own home, I realized some cliches are forged in the fires of hard-earned, painful truth. My name is Caleb Vance. I'm a structural engineer, which is a neat way of saying I spend my life calculating stress points and ensuring foundations are sound. I design buildings to withstand hurricanes, earthquakes, and the relentless pressure of time. My work is a world of certainties, of physics and mathematics, a world where a solid base guarantees a lasting structure. I had applied the same philosophy to my life, and for 4 years, I believed I had built something indestructible with Adriana Fay. We met at a mutual friend's rooftop barbecue, a sweltering Dallas evening where the city lights competed with the stars. She was a PR executive, a whirlwind of sharp intelligence, blonde hair that caught the light, and a laugh that made you feel like you were the only other person in on the joke. I was a goner by the third date. By our first anniversary, we were sharing a lease on a high-rise apartment with a view that made you feel like you owned the city. 8 months ago, on a cliff overlooking the rugged coast of Big Sur at sunset, she'd said yes. That was supposed to be our story. Simple, solid, engineered for forever. But life, unlike blueprints, doesn't adhere to predictable forces. It introduces variables you never see coming. The first tremor, the one that signaled a deep and dangerous fault line, arrived on a Tuesday. I came home from a long day of reviewing schematics to find Adriana curled up on our gray sectional sofa, the sectional we'd spent 3 weekends searching for because, as she'd insisted, the energy of the anchor piece had to be perfect. Her feet were tucked under her face illuminated by the glow of her phone. "Hey," she said, her thumb swiping across the screen, "confirm the last of the RSVPs for the engagement party." "Great," I said, walking toward the ceramic bowl on the console table, the one she'd bought specifically for my keys. "Anyone we need to chase down?" "Nope, all set." "Oh," she added, her tone utterly casual, like she was mentioning we were out of milk. "And I invited Julian." My hand stopped midair. The keys hung from my fingertips, a silent pendulum marking a shift in time. "Julian? As in Julian Croft? Your ex-boyfriend?" She finally looked up, her expression a carefully constructed mask of nonchalance. "Yeah, we've been talking again since he moved back to town. I thought it would be nice to include him. Be mature about it, you know?" I placed my keys in the bowl, the clatter of metal on ceramic sounding unnervingly loud in the quiet room. A cold, tight knot formed in my stomach. I knew the broad strokes of her history with Julian. They were a college legend, the fiery, passionate, on-again, off-again couple. The relationship had ended when he'd taken a high-flying finance job in London. She had always described it as intense, formative, but ultimately not right for the long haul. A beautiful, brilliant flame that was always destined to burn out. I tried to keep my voice level, to match her casual tone. "Why would you invite your ex to our engagement party, Adriana?" A slight, almost imperceptible roll of her eyes. "Don't be like that, Caleb. We're adults. He was a significant part of my past. He's a nice guy. You might even like him." "I doubt that," I said, sitting on the edge of the coffee table across from her. I needed to see her face, to search for something beyond the placid surface. "Look, I'm not comfortable with this. It's our night. It should be about us, not unresolved history. Can you please uninvite him?" Her expression hardened. The soft lines around her mouth tightened. "Number, I've already sent the invitation, and it would be unbelievably awkward to take it back now." More awkward than having my fiancée's intense, formative ex-boyfriend watching us celebrate our future? She sighed, placing her phone face down on the cushion beside her, a gesture of finality. "I don't understand why you're being so insecure about this. I'm marrying you, aren't I?" "That's not the point. It's about respect, about boundaries." She stood up then, a sudden, irritated energy radiating from her. "I don't owe you blind loyalty or cutting people out of my life, Caleb. We're not even married yet." Those words struck me with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't the part about loyalty. It was the dismissive, clinical addendum. "We're not even married yet." As if the ring on her finger, the 4 years we'd spent building a life, the shared apartment, the intertwined finances, the plans for children, as if all of that was just a probationary period. As if the real commitment, the one that truly mattered, only began after a walk down the aisle. "What is that supposed to mean?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. It means you're overreacting, she snapped, grabbing her phone and turning toward our bedroom. Julian is coming to the party. End of discussion. I remained on the coffee table, staring at the empty space she'd left behind. The perfect energy of the gray sectional suddenly felt cold and foreign. For the first time in 4 years, I felt a chasm opening between us. The woman I thought I knew, the Adriana I fell in love with, would have listened. She would have valued my feelings, respected my boundaries, even if she didn't agree. This new version, this dismissive, cold stranger, was someone else entirely. That night, I lay awake beside her, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing. I replayed her words in my mind, turning them over and over like a structural engineer examining a fatal flaw in a design. We're not even married yet. 5 simple words that had fractured the foundation of everything I thought we were building. And I couldn't shake the terrifying question that echoed in the darkness. What other surprises, what other strangers awaited me after we said, I do? For a few days, I tried to convince myself she was right. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe in the modern landscape of relationships, exes at engagement parties were normal. I was a man who dealt in absolutes, in concrete and steel. Perhaps I was too rigid for the fluid dynamics of the heart. I buried my unease under work, focusing on the complex load-bearing calculations for a new museum downtown. But you can't engineer away a gut feeling, and my gut was screaming that the building was unstable. 3 days after our argument, I came home early. A subcontractor had canceled, leaving me with an unexpected free afternoon. As I turned the key in the lock, I heard Adriana's laughter from our bedroom. It wasn't her polite social laugh. It was the genuine, uninhibited one, the one she usually reserved for me, the one that always made my chest feel a little lighter. I moved quietly down the polished hardwood hallway, my footsteps muffled by the runner rug. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. You always did know how to make me laugh, she was saying, her voice warm with an affection that felt like a betrayal. God, I've missed that. There was a pause. I held my breath. No, he's not home yet, she continued. Usually gets back around 7. Next Thursday works. He has that big client dinner, won't be home until late. We can grab drinks at that place we used to go to downtown. My blood ran cold. The warmth of the apartment seemed to evaporate, leaving a chilling vacuum. I backed away silently, my heart pounding a frantic, painful rhythm against my ribs. I retreated to the front door, pulled it shut, then opened it again, this time making sure it slammed with definitive force. Adriana, I called out, my voice a strained imitation of normal. I'm home early. I heard a frantic scrambling sound from the bedroom. A moment later, she emerged, her cheeks flushed, a bright, brittle smile plastered on her face. Caleb, what a nice surprise. Slow day at work? Something like that, I said, watching her carefully. Who are you talking to? Her eyes widened for a fraction of a second before her PR training kicked in, smoothing her expression into one of perfect composure. Oh, just my mom. We were planning some mother-daughter shopping before the wedding. Lie number 1. It was so blatant, so effortless, it left me breathless. Over the next few weeks, the world I knew tilted further off its axis. Adriana was constantly on her phone, a small, secretive smile playing on her lips as she texted. She'd angle the screen away whenever I walked into the room. One night, as we sat watching a movie, her phone lit up on the side table. A notification banner appeared at the top. I saw it for only a second, but the words burned themselves onto my retina. Julian Croft. Blue looks amazing on you. Always has. She snatched the phone and switched the screen off, but it was too late. The blue dress she'd worn to a work event the night before flashed in my mind. He's commenting on your clothes now, I asked, the knot in my stomach twisting tighter. She shrugged, not meeting my eyes. It's nothing. Just friendly chat. Lee number 2. The breaking point, the moment my denial finally shattered, came the following week. I came home to hear her in the guest bathroom, the one she used as her vanity because it had better lighting. She was on the phone again, her voice low and serious. I don't know, Jess, she was saying to her friend. The wedding's just a few months away, and I don't know if I'm ready. And seeing Julian again, it's been complicated. A pause. No, it's not just nostalgia. He gets me in a way Caleb doesn't sometimes. He makes me feel alive again. Alive again. As if the life we'd built together was a form of living death. I backed away from the door, the floorboards groaning under my weight. My heart felt like a piece of overstressed concrete, cracking under a load it was never designed to bear. Later that evening, she kissed me hello and asked about my day, and I smiled and told her everything was fine. But inside, something had irrevocably crumbled. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I became a spy in my own relationship. After she fell asleep, I picked up her phone, my hands trembling. It was locked. Of course it was. I went to her laptop and opened her social media. It was a curated gallery of our perfect life. Photos of us hiking, smiling at dinner, raising champagne glasses. Nothing with Julian. But then I started digging deeper, looking at photos she was tagged in. And there it was. A photo posted 3 days prior by a mutual acquaintance from a trendy rooftop bar I'd never been to. It was a group shot, but in the background, slightly out of focus, was Adriana. She was leaning in close to a man whose face was partially obscured, but whose sharp profile and dark hair were unmistakably Julian's pangs. Her expression was luminous, a picture of pure, unadulterated joy. She looked happier than I had seen her look in months. Then I read the caption. Throwback Thursday vibe on a Tuesday. Some reunions are written in the stars. And then, the hashtag that felt like a punch to the gut. Number old flames, new sparks. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. It wasn't just in my head. It wasn't insecurity. It was real. And it was happening right under my nose. A public spectacle that I was the last to know about. I booked a table for drinks with my best friend Seth the next evening. He was going to be my best man. I laid it all out for him. The phone calls, the texts, the overheard confession, the photograph. He listened, his usual easygoing expression hardening into one of deep concern. Man, you need to confront her, he said, shaking his head. And say what? Hey, I've been eavesdropping on your calls and stalking your social media tags? I sighed, rubbing my temples. Maybe they are just friends. Maybe I'm the one turning this into something it's not. Seth gave me a look that said he wasn't buying it for a second, and neither was I. Just watch her at the party, I said, my voice heavy. Watch them together, and then tell me if I'm crazy. He hesitated, swirling the whiskey in his glass. You're not crazy, Caleb, but you might be in denial. He took a deep breath. There's something else. My girlfriend Megan, she saw them together a couple of weeks ago. My heart sank into my shoes. Where? That new hotel bar downtown. The one with the crazy cocktails. They were in a corner booth. And according to Megan, it didn't look like a casual catch-up. There was hand-touching, intense conversation. At one point, she said Adriana was crying, and Julian was wiping her tears away. I downed my drink in one searing gulp. So, I was officially the last person to know my fiancé was having, at the very least, an emotional affair. The foundation hadn't just cracked. It was about to collapse entirely. The night of the engagement party felt like walking onto a movie set where I was the only one who hadn't read the script. Luciana's, the upscale Italian restaurant Adriana had chosen, was transformed. String lights twinkled over the private terrace, white roses overflowed from crystal vases, and large, beautifully printed photos of us smiling in Colorado, laughing on a beach in Mexico, kissing under a Christmas tree were everywhere. It was a meticulously crafted monument to a relationship that I now knew was a lie. It should have felt magical. Instead, it felt like a mausoleum. As I stood examining a photo of us, snowflakes catching in Adriana's hair, I felt a presence beside me. It was Eleanor, a sharp-eyed friend of Adriana's mother, a woman who moved through life with the authority of someone who had seen it all and was not impressed. She always photographs beautifully, doesn't she? Eleanor commented, a champagne flute already in her hand. I've known Adriana since she was a girl, always a romantic, always chasing the next big thrill. Her mother was the same. That's why she's on husband number 3. She gave me a pointed look. I was relieved when she found you. A steady man, a builder, someone who might finally anchor her. My stomach tightened. Julian's coming tonight, actually. Eleanor's perfectly sculpted eyebrows shot up. Is he now? Well, that should be interesting. She patted my arm, her touch surprisingly firm. Keep your eyes open, dear. Adriana has always had a weakness for pretty things that burn too bright. Her cryptic warning lingered in the air as guests began to arrive. My parents, Adriana's mother and her husband, friends, family, they all came to me with beaming smiles and hearty congratulations. I smiled back, accepted hugs, and felt like a complete fraud, all while keeping one eye trained on the entrance. Adriana arrived looking like a goddess. She wore a stunning, fitted dress in a shade of electric blue, the same color from Julian's text message. The choice felt like a deliberate, secret message to him, a flaunting of their connection right in front of me. She kissed my cheek, whispered, "You look handsome," and was immediately swallowed by a sea of friends. And then, at 8 o'clock, I saw him. Julian Croft was everything you'd expect. Tall, effortlessly handsome in a way that suggested good genes and an expensive gym, wearing a tailored suit that probably cost more than my first car. He scanned the crowd, and his eyes found Adriana. The smile that spread across his face was not the polite smile of an old friend. It was intimate, possessory, a look that staked a claim. Seth appeared at my side, a fresh glass of scotch in his hand. "That him?" "Yeah," I said, watching as Adriana broke away from her conversation and greeted Julian with a hug that lasted just a beat too long. He handed her a small, elegantly wrapped box. She opened it right there, her face lighting up with genuine delight. It was a delicate silver necklace. Without a moment's hesitation, she turned, lifting her hair so he could fasten it around her neck. His fingers lingered on her skin. My skin, the place where I had kissed her just that morning. "I need another drink," I muttered. The rest of the night was a surreal nightmare. Adriana played the part of the perfect fiancée, but her orbit was centered around Julian. I saw them in a corner, heads bent close together, sharing a private joke. I saw her touch his arm as she laughed. I saw her new necklace catching the light, a glittering symbol of his presence at our party. The whispers started. I caught the concerned glances from my parents, the pitying looks from my friends. My own mother cornered me by the dessert table. "Caleb, is everything all right? That young man Adriana's been talking to all night. Her ex-boyfriend, Mom." Her eyes widened. "I see. And you're comfortable with that?" "Not really," I admitted. The understatement of the century. By 10 o'clock, the atmosphere on the terrace was thick with unspoken tension. I retreated to the bar, where I found Seth in an intense conversation with Eleanor. They both fell silent as I approached. "Don't stop on my account," I said grimly. Eleanor gave me a sympathetic look. "We were just discussing the unusual dynamics of this evening." She glanced around, then leaned closer. "Did she ever tell you she was engaged once before? Right after college to a lovely boy named Grant." "Oh." The room seemed to tilt. "No," I said faintly. "She never mentioned that." "I'm not surprised," Eleanor said, her voice low. "It wasn't her finest moment. They'd been together 2 years. Julian showed up at their engagement dinner, uninvited. 3 weeks later, she'd broken things off with poor Grant and moved in with Julian. I looked across the room at Adriana, my Adriana, laughing with Julian, and tried to reconcile this new, devastating piece of information with the woman I thought I knew. This wasn't a mistake. This was a pattern. Before I could process it, a commotion pulled everyone's attention. Adriana was standing on a chair, a champagne glass held high. "I'd like to make a toast," she called out, her voice a little too loud, her cheeks flushed from wine. "To my amazing fiancé, Caleb." Light. Every eye in the place turned to me. I forced a smile that felt like it would crack my face. "Caleb is the most reliable, dependable man I've ever known," she continued, her words carefully enunciated. "He's always there, always exactly where he's supposed to be. You could set your watch by him." The compliments felt like insults, describing me as a household appliance. She paused, and her eyes scanned the crowd until they locked with Julian's. But before Caleb, there was someone else. Someone who taught me what passion really means. Someone who showed me how to live in the moment, to take risks, to feel everything. A horrified, collective silence fell over the party. It was so quiet I could hear the fizzing of champagne bubbles. I felt my blood turn to ice in my veins. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. "To past loves," Adriana declared, raising her glass even higher, seemingly oblivious to the crater she had just created. "And future marriages." No one moved. Then Julian stepped forward, taking her hand to help her down. "I think that's enough champagne for you," he murmured. She giggled, leaning against him. "You always did know when to rein me in." That was it. The final stress test. The structure failed. I walked forward, the sound of my own footsteps deafening in the silence. I stopped directly in front of them. The three of us, the past and the present, colliding in a catastrophic spectacle. "Having fun?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. Adriana blinked, as if just now remembering I existed. "Caleb, there you are. I was just telling everyone how wonderful you are." "No," I said, my voice low but carrying in the stillness. "You were telling everyone how passionate your ex-boyfriend is. just in case anyone missed the message you've been sending all night." The color drained from her face. "What? No, Save it," I cut her off. I turned to our stunned friends and family. "Thank you all for coming tonight. I truly appreciate it. Unfortunately, I've just realized there won't be a wedding after all." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Caleb, what are you doing?" Adriana hissed, grabbing my arm. "You're embarrassing me." I laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "I'm embarrassing you? That's rich. You're overreacting. It was just a silly toast." "It wasn't just the toast, Adriana," I said, my voice rising just enough for those nearby to hear. "It was the secret meetings, the late-night texts, the lies. Did you think I wouldn't notice, or did you just not care?" I looked at Julian, who at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. "She's all yours, man." Again. I looked him dead in the eye. "Hope it works out better this time than it did with Grant." The flicker of shock in his eyes was all the confirmation I needed. With that, I turned and walked away. I ignored Adriana's frantic calls for me to come back, to be reasonable. I had been reasonable for weeks. I was done being reasonable. I walked straight off the terrace, out of the restaurant, and into the warm Texas night, loosening my tie as I went. I didn't look back. I ended up at a small, nameless bar on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place with sticky floors and cheap scotch where no one cared who you were. I sat in a corner booth, my phone turned off, and tried to process the implosion of my life. The strangest part was the profound, hollowed-out sense of relief that washed over me. The weight of suspicion and denial I'd been carrying for weeks was finally gone. Around midnight, the door creaked open and Seth walked in. He spotted me and slid into the booth without a word, simply ordering 2 whiskeys. "How'd you find me?" I finally asked after a long silence. "Location sharing. You never turned it off after that camping trip last year," he said. We sat for another moment. "So," he said, breaking the quiet, "that was quite an exit. Tout dramatique." "No, man, it was exactly right." He took a sip of his drink. "You should have seen what happened after you left." Despite myself, I was curious. "What?" Adriana completely lost it, crying, yelling at Julian for ruining everything. And then, he leaned forward, a grim smile on his face. The best part. Julian's date showed up. I stopped with my glass halfway to my lips. "He had a date? Another woman?" Seth nodded. "Yep, a tall brunette model type. Apparently he thought this was just a friendly pop-in at an ex's party. His actual girlfriend was meeting him there for dinner after. She was not impressed to find Adriana hanging all over her boyfriend. It was a complete mess." I let out a short, bitter laugh. Of course, Adriana wasn't a prize to be won back. She was just a diversion for him. The next day, I checked into a nondescript hotel near my office. My phone, when I finally turned it on, was a minefield of missed calls and frantic texts from Adriana. I ignored them all. Around noon, there was a knock on my door. It was her eyes red-rimmed and her makeup smudged. "How did you find me?" I asked, blocking the doorway. Seth told me. "Please, Caleb, can I come in?" I stepped aside reluctantly. She stood awkwardly in the middle of the sterile room. "What you did last night was humiliating," she began. I laughed without humor. "That's rich coming from you." "Nothing happened with Julian," she insisted. "Something was happening, Adriana. An emotional affair. You've been cheating on me for weeks." "I've been confused," she cried, tears welling. "Yes, seeing him brought up old feelings, but I never cheated. You told your friend he makes you feel alive again. You spent our entire engagement party draped around him. What would you call it?" I asked, my voice flat. She sat heavily on the edge of the bed. "A mistake. I love you, Caleb. We can work through this." I looked at her, this woman I had planned to build a life with, and felt nothing but a vast, weary exhaustion. "Why didn't you tell me you were engaged before? To Grant?" She went pale. "Who told you that?" "Does it matter? You hid it from me for 4 years, Adriana. And now I find out you're repeating the exact same pattern, inviting Julian to blow up another engagement." "It wasn't like that. Grant and I were wrong for each other." And what about us?" I asked quietly. "Are we wrong for each other too?" She reached for my hand. "No, Caleb, we're perfect. You're stable, kind, dependable." "Stop," I said, pulling my hand away. "That's how you described me last night, like I'm a reliable appliance. Is that all I am to you, the safe choice?" Her hesitation before she denied it was my answer. After she left, defeated, I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. Then I opened my contacts and found a number for an old colleague who used to work at the same architecture firm as Grant. A few calls later, I had his number. I dialed before I could lose my nerve. Grant, you don't know me, but my name is Caleb Vance. I was engaged to Adriana Fay. I think we might have some things to talk about. We met for coffee the next day. He was a kind-eyed man about my age with a firm handshake and a weary understanding in his expression. It was surreal, sitting across from the ghost of my own future. I was surprised to get your call, he said. I appreciate you meeting me, I replied. I just needed to know the real story. His story was painfully, terrifyingly familiar. The happy relationship, the engagement, and then the sudden reappearance of Julian Croft. She invited him to our engagement dinner, Grant said, shaking his head in disbelief. An intimate dinner for 20, and she invited him. ID. How did you know? He asked when I told him my story. Because she did the exact same thing to me. Understanding dawned on his face. Ah, history repeating itself. He sighed. She broke it off 2 weeks later. Said she wasn't ready, needed to find herself. All the usual cliches. She was officially with Julian within a month. How long did they last? I asked. Grant actually laughed. That's the kicker. 6 months. Then he cheated on her and it imploded spectacularly. She called me after, crying, saying she'd made a huge mistake. Did you take her back? Hell no, he said emphatically. By then I'd realized what a bullet I'd dodged. Adriana is addicted to chaos. She wants what she can't have. The second she gets it, she loses interest. In a weird way, he said as we were preparing to leave, she did me a favor. If she'd stayed, I never would have met my wife. He showed me a picture of a smiling woman and a small baby. He was happy, truly happy. Talking to him, I felt a strange sense of solidarity. He wasn't a rival or a predecessor. He was a survivor. And for the first time, I started to believe that I could be one too. The conversation with Grant was the final piece of data I needed. It confirmed that the flaw wasn't in my design. It was in the fundamental instability of the materials I had been given. Armed with that certainty, I began the demolition. I went back to our apartment one last time when I knew Adriana would be at work. As I was packing my things, I saw her laptop open on the dining table. An email notification from Julian popped up. Against my better judgment, I clicked on it. It was the end of a long thread. I scrolled to the beginning. It started 2 months ago. Adriana to Julian. So good to hear from you. Yes, I'm engaged. His name is Caleb. He's sweet and stable. Julian to Adriana. Sweet and stable sounds boring. You always needed excitement, Faye. The exchanges grew more flirtatious, culminating in her invitation. Julian, won't your fiancé mind? Adriana, he'll deal with it. Besides, what he doesn't know won't hurt him. I felt sick. The most recent emails from that very morning were a pathetic coda. Adriana begging Julian to help her fix things, claiming he was just a fantasy. Julian, cold and dismissive, telling her he wasn't interested in being her walk on the wild side before domestic bliss and to figure her own life out. I copied the entire thread and sent it to myself. It was ugly, but it was the truth. This wasn't a momentary lapse. It was a calculated risk she took, a game she played with my life as the wager. That afternoon, I systematically dismantled our future. I called the wedding venue, the caterer, the florist. I sent a short professional email to our entire guest list, explaining that the wedding was off. It felt strangely like managing a challenging work project, a controlled demolition rather than the dismantling of my heart. The hysterical phone call from Adriana came that night. What have you done? How could you cancel our wedding without talking to me? I saw your emails with Julian, Adriana, I said quietly. Silence. Then her voice, small and broken. It wasn't what it looked like. Oh, it was exactly what it looked like, I said. It's over. And I hung up. The next few months were a blur of logistics and deliberate distraction. I found a small apartment closer to my office. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects, staying late, pouring all my displaced energy into concrete and steel. At least there, the rules were clear. Seth kept me updated. Julian had gone back to London. Adriana, in a cruel twist of small-town karma, had been fired from her PR firm. Her boss was friends with a partner at my company, and the story of the party had made the rounds. I couldn't bring myself to feel anything about it. Slowly, I began rebuilding not just a life, but myself. I started rock climbing at an indoor gym, something I'd always wanted to try but never had because Adriana found it too dangerous. Dangling from a rope 50 feet in the air, focusing only on the next handhold, I found a strange sense of peace. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected, realizing how much my social life had revolved around Adriana's orbit. I was rediscovering parts of myself I hadn't even realized, were submerged my dry sense of humor, my love for spontaneous road trips, my own quiet sense of adventure. Adriana had cast me as the stable, dependable one, and over time, I'd started to believe that was the whole of my identity. I was discovering it was just the foundation. 8 months after the party, Seth dragged me to a dinner party, and that's where I met Clara Bennett. She was a kindergarten teacher with thoughtful brown eyes and a laugh that wasn't a performance, but a genuine expression of joy. Our connection was immediate and effortless. There were no games, no hidden agendas. "You seem surprised every time I say what I'm actually thinking," she commented on our third date. "I'm not used to it," I admitted. "It's refreshing." With Clara, there were no fault lines to analyze, no hidden stresses. She was open, honest, and incredibly kind. One night, months into our relationship, as we lay in bed, she traced patterns on my chest and said, "You've been hurt before, badly." It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. And for the first time, I told someone the whole story. All of it. The party, the emails, Grant, the aftermath. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "She sounds like she was lost," she finally said, her voice filled with a compassion that stunned me. "It doesn't excuse what she did, not at all. But sometimes people sabotage the good things in their lives because deep down, they don't believe they deserve them." I'll bed. I turned to look at her, struck by her ability to see the humanity in someone who had caused me so much pain. In that moment, I knew this was different. This was real. This foundation was sound. Almost exactly 2 years after what would have been my wedding day, I was pushing a cart through the sterile aisles of a supermarket. Clara was beside me, passionately debating the structural integrity of fusilli versus rigatoni for the bolognese sauce she was planning to make. Life was beautifully, wonderfully normal. And then I saw her. At the far end of the pasta aisle, standing under the harsh fluorescent lights, was Adriana Fay. She looked tired. Her hair was shorter, her clothes seemed to hang loosely on her thinner frame, and she wore minimal makeup. Next to her was a man with a look of barely contained irritation on his face, as she examined 2 different jars of marinara sauce. "Just pick one, Addie," I heard him say, his voice sharp. "They're basically the same." "They're not the same," she replied, an edge of her own in her voice. "This one has basil, and this one has—" "Whatever," he cut her off, already turning away. "I'll be in the beer aisle." As he walked off, I saw Adriana's shoulders slump in a gesture of weary defeat. She put both jars in her cart without looking at them and turned. Her eyes met mine, and she froze. For a long, silent moment, we just stared at each other across an expanse of linoleum and brightly colored pasta boxes. A dozen emotions flickered across her face: shock, embarrassment, regret. Then she offered a small, tentative smile and started walking toward us. Clara, sensing the shift in my posture, squeezed my hand. "Is that—" "Yeah," I said quietly. "That's Adriana." "Caleb," she said when she reached us, her voice softer than I remembered. "Hi." "Hey, Adriana." An awkward silence fell, thick with 4 years of shared history and 2 years of pain. Her eyes flicked from my face to Clara, then to our intertwined hands. "This is Clara," I said, filling the void. "Clara, this is Adriana." "Nice to meet you," Clara said, her tone warm and genuine, without a trace of malice or triumph. Adriana just nodded. "You too." Her gaze lingered on our hands for a second too long before returning to my face. "You look good, Caleb. Happy." "I am," I said, and the most surprising thing was how simple and true that statement felt. There was no need to embellish, no need to prove a point. It was just a fact. She seemed about to say something else when the impatient man reappeared at the end of the aisle. "Addie, come on. The game starts in 30 minutes. Adriana closed her eyes for a brief moment, as if gathering strength. "I should go," she said. It was good to see you." "You too," I said, and was surprised to find I meant it. As she walked away to join him, I watched her straighten her spine and plaster on a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I saw her fall back into a pattern with a different man in a different aisle, but the dynamics felt depressingly familiar. Clara leaned against me slightly. "Are you okay?" I turned away from the sight of my past and looked at the woman who was my present and my future. I thought about all the twists and turns, the demolition, and the careful reconstruction that had led me from there to here, from her to Clara. "Yeah," I said, turning our cart toward the checkout. "I'm really okay." That night, as Clara and I cooked dinner together in the kitchen of the house we'd bought 6 months prior, laughing over some silly story from her day with her kindergartners, I realized something profound. My real victory wasn't in the final, satisfying words I'd said at the party. It wasn't in seeing Adriana unhappy or in the life I'd built without her. The real victory was quieter. It was in the fact that I had survived what should have broken me and come out stronger and kinder on the other side. It was in the easy, trusting love I now shared. "What are you thinking about?" Clara asked, catching me staring at her with a smile. "Just how lucky I am," I replied, pulling her close. "Because sometimes the most unexpected twist in your story isn't the betrayal that knocks you down. It's the quiet, solid, unshakable happiness you find when you learn how to build again."